check before we start. For all the participants, if you can hear me, can you please type in yes on the comment section, just making sure that the audio is clear. All right, thank you. I think, yes, most of you guys can hear me. Thank you so much. We're just going to wait for like few minutes in order for other participants to log in. So please stand by and we will start in the next 2 minutes. So basically, if you have any questions on the roundtable discussion, please feel free to type in your question on the comment section, and that will be answered on the later part of the event. We will have a moderator here who will assist us for the questions. So just wait for at least a minute in order for other participants to log in. All right, so for those who just logged in right now, if you guys can hear me again, another audio check, please type in yes on the comment section. Thank you. All right, thank you. Perfect. I think everyone can hear me now. So without any further ado, I will just pass the stage to Mr. Sergio, our moderator for today, so he can start. Go ahead, sir.
Good day. Hello, everyone. From just around Kiev. I'm just about 30 miles from Kiev on my way to Kiev. From a business trip, we are an investment agency that supports and attracts investments into Ukraine, and we are doing our operations today as well. Our activity is a bit changed, and we need to speak to the world to let the world know what needs to be done in order to rebuild Ukraine, in order to ensure regional and global stability, and not allowing any crisis, any more kind of a deeper crisis to come out of this illegal military aggression against Ukraine. I would like to thank International Trade Council for organizing this event, and I would like to thank my dear friends Emma Turas and Burak Palivan, for taking part in this event. There will be two speakers today, and your humble servant as well. I will say a couple of words about Ukraine, so I'm kind of a semi-speaker and a moderator today. And we will have a talk about latest updates related to trade, logistics, and hopefully potential for investments into Ukraine. So what's happening in Ukraine? Probably all of you know latest updates. I will give you some figures. The immediate and following effect on Ukrainian economy, infrastructure, GDP, and so on, total negative effect is already estimated at a level of about $1 trillion. Immediate negative effect on infrastructure of Ukraine, assessed by the government of Ukraine, is $120 billion. $270 billion negative effect on the economy, and so on. So, bearing in mind that Ukrainian GDP is around 200 billion a year, negative effect, the total negative effect, already compared to 5 GDPs in total. So we can see that it's a very significant scale. But as I said during our previous event, this is no longer a Ukraine-only economic crisis. We have seen estimation of International Monetary Fund, and they said that the world's economic growth will decline almost in half, from 6.1% to 3.6%. It's a very big amount of slowing down of the world economy. When we talk about inflation, same story. Inflation in developed countries will go up to 5.7%, and in developing countries to 8.7%. So it's inflation on the rise. Ukraine is a big agricultural country in the heart of Europe. We feed more than 150 people worldwide. Our ports are blocked, specifically Mariupol port, and we cannot ship goods to our clients throughout the world. Mariupol port was number one in terms of metals transshipment in Ukraine, and number 5 in Ukraine in terms of cargo transshipment to the whole world. So you can see how important that port was and is for regional and global stability. I will give you one more figure because Ukraine is not only agricultural country. In Mariupol, a company called Ingas LLC is a producer of semiconductors grade neon. So they produce 50% of the world market in terms of these semiconductors. And 90% of these semiconductors that supply to US, they come from Ukraine. So you can see all these territories that affected by war, they were already integrated into global supply chains. So the whole world will feel consequences. So it's the task for the whole world to make sure that this war, illegal, unprovoked war, will stop as soon as possible. There should be conditions for peace treaty, conditions that will be accepted by Ukrainians, by people of Ukraine, by president of Ukraine, by government of Ukraine. There will be no conditions accepted that will not leave Ukrainians feel safe and certain of boundaries of our land. This is very important. Ukraine Invest conducts surveys all the time, and we speak to our clients, we speak to Ukrainian investors, we speak to international investors, and more than 29% of investors said that their operations were affected. About 30% said that they cannot operate any longer, and about 52% said that their operations were affected to some extent. To rebuild Ukraine, we will need to create a plan. But before we do create a plan, we need to make sure that Ukrainian economy is sustainable and operates as usual. According to Ukrainian experts, to President of Ukraine, to Prime Minister of Ukraine, we need at least 5 to 7 billion US dollars to support Ukrainian economy. And also, according to President of Ukraine, it is very important to start rebuilding infrastructure straight away. There is no need to wait to the end of the war, to do that. More than 22,000 kilometers of Ukrainian roads were destroyed or damaged. More than 546 educational facilities were hit, about 200 hospitals and so on. Only in Kharkiv alone, the city about 20-30 miles from the Russian border, more than 1,000 buildings were destroyed. So it's a very serious crisis. But we understand that there are several levels of communications in terms of bringing help to Ukraine, bringing assistance to rebuild Ukraine. So there is a very active political dialogue on state level, but we also need to engage private business. Private business will be very important. Hello, can you hear me? Because I lost you for a second.
Yes, yes.
Hello, you can hear me? Yeah. Private business is very important in order to rebuild Ukraine. So today we talk to representatives of private business. Emma Turas, she's the managing director of Canadian Ukrainian Chamber of Commerce, and Burak Pehlivan, who is the chairman of Turkish Ukrainian Business Association. So I, as a representative of governmental structure, personally interested to hear about support from our Canadian and Turkish friends. I know that, for example, in Canada, there are new amendments attached to the Canadian-Ukrainian Free Trade Agreement in order to stimulate investments as well. And we expect support from our partners from Canada and Turkey. So it is my pleasure. I have introduced already our friends, and it's my real pleasure to ask Emma Turas to take the floor and to take about view of Canadian business, what can be done, how private business can be engaged, and what are your views about current trade relations and what needs to be done to ensure that Ukraine will be rebuilt as a new country, innovative, progressive, and this will be done on a win-win foundation between our partner countries and Ukraine. Emma, please, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much, Sergey. Thank you, dear friends, for this opportunity to speak and to deliver a message from the Canadian business, which is still working in Ukraine, especially in such important areas as oil and gas, in metal, and other industries, because even tiny, like a small apparel factory, these are people behind this business. So let me tell a little bit about our organization very briefly, and I will try to speak from the Canadian perspective. And I would like to to say that I have to down my emotions, because this is drama for each Ukrainian, this individual, each Ukrainian family. So our organization is a Canada-Ukraine Chamber of Commerce, is a member-driven Canadian business association promoting trade and investments between Canada and Ukraine, and fostering cooperation between Canadian and Ukrainian public and private stakeholders. We work in close cooperation with the Canadian and Ukrainian governments now, and as well with diaspora, represented by a number of organizations such as Ukrainian World Congress, Congress of Ukrainian Canadians, and others. Since our founding in 1992, so we are 30 years old now, with a long history of friendly and mutually supportive political, economic, and cultural relations between Canada and Ukraine, our organization is a serious advisory voice for government of Ukraine and the government of Canada. So we are just linked between businesses, but also between the governments. And our membership is about 230 members, but of course we have much more partners now. As Sergey has already mentioned, on the 1st of August of 2017, together with the whole business community, we celebrated the inception of the free trade area between Canada and Ukraine, COFTA. I will say briefly COFTA. And this created unprecedented commercial opportunities for business for both countries. Implementation of COFTA and projects like Canada-Ukraine Trade and Investment Support projects resulted in sustainable growth of trade between countries. Of course, Burak may say that trade between Canada and Ukraine is modest in numbers, but it is growing. And let me bring in quick facts. Canada and Ukraine maintain strong and vibrant political, economic, and people-to-people ties, rooted in the Canadian Ukrainian community of over 1.3 million people. In Canada has Canadian roots. Canada-Ukraine merchandise trade was about 300 million in 2020, and within 2 months of 2022, just listen attentively to these numbers. In January and February, bilateral trade was about 200 million. This means, in Canadian dollars, of course, this means a growth of just increase of 185% of the Ukrainian import to Canada, and about 9% increase of the Canadian export to Ukraine. Canadians source from Ukraine iron and steel and articles, railway parts, metal products and machinery, pigments and paints, sunflower oil and other food products, and production of our apparel industry, just great variety of goods. At the same time, Canada is not only a strategic partner of Ukraine, but also one of the key suppliers of machinery, equipment and tools, pharmaceutical products, fish, and many other products. Over 2 months of the Russians' war against Ukraine, which, as I have already mentioned, caused no drama to all Ukrainian families. You know that 2/3 of Ukrainian children now are abroad. Can you imagine that? And people, but just new challenges for our economy and trade. Speaking from the Canadian perspective, this is logistics. Because situation is changing every day, every single day. That is why the Ukrainian Chamber of Commerce and Industry is making weekly meetings dedicated to this topic. So I will speak about problems of the Canadian businesses and also Ukrainian businesses working with Ukraine. As Sergei has already mentioned, import from central and eastern Ukraine. These are sources of metal and agricultural products. This export is related to marine and land transportation, and they are just much dependent on seaports. River ports such as Kherson are occupied, as well as Mariupol, and Odessa port is blocked. So these channels are unavailable. That's why our businesses are trying to fulfill already existing contracts, and they use a mix of land transportation to the western borders of Ukraine. These are Poland and Moldova, and then to Romanian, Constanza, and Baltic ports, German and Polish. Of course, such logistics, this maybe doubled, if not tripled in price. Also insurance, shortage of containers, railway cards, and port facilities add extra difficulties to our producers who are trying to fulfill existing contracts, and of course this situation hamper bilateral trade. Land transportation is not working for all regions of Ukraine, so that's why and carriers can't take this risk. That's why producers are delivering goods to central or western Ukraine, and then additionally reload their products and deliver to the seaports. Perishable products are not discussed at this point of time, and Russia has purposely created serious threat for food security of the whole world. We know how much many countries of the world depend on the Ukrainian grain, sunflower oil, sometimes eggs, and other production of poultry industry, and so on. And situation with import from Canada is matter of other discussions, so that is why our producers are trying to buy a minimum of critical raw materials or items only. So what can be done immediately? Insurance program. This can be public-private partnership. So the stakeholders from the whole Europe and Northern America are to sit together and think how this transportation and logistics can be insured and find a solution. Because as far as I know, before, just in the beginning of this year, our government has launched such a program, has initiated, but we still badly need this insurance. And also, I would like to approach to our European partners and brokers. My Canadian logistic companies and also producers told me that custom brokers are refusing to issue T1 um, papers. This is a custom transit document which guarantees that goods will leave the European Union territory. So they have concerns that document is properly made at the Ukrainian border. That's why this creates additional problems for our transporters. So what are we doing now? So we are working with our producers and are trying to help them with relocation. We are informing the Canadian business about opportunities in Ukraine, and many businesses just are relocated to Canada. They get the Canadian registration, and of course, this is connected with individuals. So Canada-Ukraine Chamber of Commerce is participating in joint Canadian program of creation of job bank for Ukrainians who are moved to Ukraine and who they have a status of not refugees but people who are fleeing the war territories. So, and also many other activities. Now we are trying to work with business association in Canada and the Canadian government to provide for support to industries such as oil and gas industry, because our teams are doing miracles to repair infrastructure. And any kind of support with the equipment would be helpful to help our teams to sustain electricity, water, and or gas supply to producers. Thank you so much, and thank you for speaking so long.
Thank you, Emma. It
Sorry
was
for
very
speaking so long.
no. It was good. No, yes, indeed, very interesting presentation, and I think that there will be a lot of projects connected to different types of insurance programs, and one of them, I'm sure, should be on private investments, because private investments also needs to be insured, and we expect some feedback from business associations, in order to assess what kind of what amount of private investment could be or need to be insured. So we will be getting in touch with you and colleagues on this as well. Now I would like to introduce once again Burak Pehlivan, chairman of Turkish-Ukrainian Business Association. Turkey is a big friend of Ukraine, political, military, and economic friend. Today we talk about economic friendship. So in terms of investments from Turkey, we already have, if I'm not mistaken, off the top of my head, more than $3 billion of investments in Ukraine. We have big companies like Turkcell operating in Ukraine. We have big companies that help Ukraine build roads and infrastructure, and other companies. And I'm sure that more will follow. So, dear Burak, please, the floor is yours. What are your views on trade, investment, recent relations and developments related to Ukraine? Thank you.
Thank you very much, Sergey. Good afternoon, everybody from Kiev. It's a big pleasure to see today two distinguished friends and share with you today the floor, Emma and Sergey. The unprovoked and the unjustified attack of Russian Federation on Ukraine is unacceptable with the strongest stand for all of us. And the world, including me, everybody admires how Ukrainians defend their lands and their territories against the attempt of that invasion. We have seen over the recent months. Unfortunately, many humanitarian pains, and I hope that all kind of that things will end soon. 2-3 weeks ago, when I turned back to Ukraine, I was walking on the streets, and a Ukrainian, let's say, colleague, an employee in a Turkish company, said me hello and asked me when we'll start again our jobs to come back. And it was the first day when I came back to Ukraine, and I understood that immediately that even during the war, keeping employment is very important. Keeping at least jobs is very important, because people in every time, even during the war, need to bring their home bread. So such kind of events really focus on that so important issues even the wartime. So thank you very much for the organizers for that event. Before the war, there are more than 400, 700 Turkish companies in Ukraine, and the total Turkish investment, foreign investment in Ukraine, was around $4.5 billion. And Turkey is one of the 3 top investors in the country. Turkish companies employ more than 30,000 employees in different sectors, and at least in 10 sectors, there used to be market leaders among the Turkish companies, from the sugar care products to shaving shells, from machinery to cosmetics. And Turkish business presence weren't only in big cities or central Ukrainian capital city as Kiev. As association, for example, we have 7 regional branches, and among all international business associations, we have the largest business network or branch network in the country. Turkish-Ukrainian trade was in 2021 $7.5 billion, and that trade increased in 1 year between 2020-21 55%. And after this 55% increase, in the January 2022, the increase, when we compare the same period 2021, it was 56%. So we could reach that year even a number to foreign trade between 2 countries more than $10 billion. So we are in the golden age of Turkish-Ukrainian business economic relations, as well as political relations. And after the war, there is, of course, a big fallout, big impact on Ukrainian economy. I don't have any correct statistics about it, but I can guess almost 50% of all employees lost their works, at least temporarily. Ukraine is the largest sunflower oil exporter in the world, the 5th largest wheat exporter in the world. In some metals, one of the most important exporters in the world. So to protect, to secure Ukraine export possibilities is not just only for Ukraine economy is important, for all world economy is important. Due to invasion and due to blockade of Russian Navy to Ukrainian ports, Ukraine cannot use its ports. Before the war, in 2021, Ukraine exported 145 billion ton of goods through its ports in Black Sea ports and Azov Sea ports. Now Ukraine can use only 5 million tons of that capacity. And the substitute of that port capacity through the railways or land transports is only 90 million tons. So almost 80% Ukrainian port export capacity, more than 80% of Ukrainian export capacity is not usable now. And it is not only a danger for Ukrainian economy, as I mentioned, it is a danger for all world economy. As Sergey underlined that Ukraine's importance for food security in the world is very important. 2-3 days ago, the largest palm oil producers, Indonesia, said that it doesn't give allowance its exporters to export palm oil from the country. There's an export ban in the country. And palm oil, as you know, is the most usable vegetable oil in the world. Considering Ukraine cannot export its oil too, it will be very dangerous for the food security in the world. Again, in grain, we've seen it. There is a chaos now in Sri Lanka because of the food issues and high food prices. The food price index is the highest point in the history. So to open to Ukrainian ports is not only important for the Ukrainian economy and for all world economy. Because of the war and supply problems, economic problems, only 80% of Ukrainian land can be solved that year. So the fallout of that year's war, even the war will finish soon, we will see in the near future. So to open of Ukrainian ports is very critical point. Of course, we should try some substitutes as mentioned. Ukraine can use Gdansk, Klaipėda or Baltic or other Baltic ports more and more. But the capacity of that ports are limited. Again, to send the goods from Ukraine through land transports possibilities to the exporters limited too. So it is a must to open all these ports and lift the blockades of Ukrainian ports. Turkish businesses, in spite of the problems, try to work in the country. We should mention that time West helped Ukraine more and more because unlike 2014 and 15, over the recent 8 years maybe, if we look how many support Ukraine got from the West and how many in these 2 months, there is a big difference. So if this tendency continue, I think it will be, we will have enough resources in Ukraine to reconstruct and rebuild the country. When we look to at least commitments, G7 countries committed at least $24 billion. According to Prime Minister of Ukraine, Mr. Shmyhal, IMF could provide Ukraine monthly $5 billion. World Bank committed $4.8 billion. EU, with the project Stand Up for Ukraine, collected around $12 billion. And there are many countries, they committed for Ukraine for mutual commitments. So I think if this tendency will continue, as I mentioned, it will continue. So rebuilding and reconstruction, we will have in Ukraine enough resources. But for that point, it is very important to support Ukraine now. Because people need now employment too. Because people need now jobs in Ukraine. Sincerely, I don't have any statistics, but I can guess these 30,000 people who used to work for Turkish companies, at least 60-70% of them now maybe they got somehow their wage, but they don't work because due to all these problems which created war, to make business in Ukraine is not easy. No. We should accept it. Thanks to God, because of the competence of Ukrainian government, banking system functioned perfectly during this time. Government tried to provide for agrarians, for companies, zero interest rates banking loans. There is at least a list of goods that you can import to Ukraine, and for goods you can buy currency and to pay your suppliers. And there is a free time to don't pay taxes, and there is a single tax regime for companies to pay 2%. So there are such kind of initiatives by the government. But I think to facilitate more to make business in Ukraine, that narrow list of import goods should be expanded because many companies need raw materials and components to produce their goods. Second, should more focus on logistic issues, at least till the point that Ukrainian ports unblockade. So we should focus more on maybe dry ports, to build dry ports, to invest, to focus on more railroads, to buy maybe more locomotives and more wagons, railway cars, and to more liberalize track navigation between EU countries, between neighbor of Ukraine and neighbors. So we need some simplification about that process. Logistics, the aviation logistics is important too. Now, unfortunately, Ukraine civil aviation, it's forbidden to fly to Ukraine or from Ukraine. So we should focus on the closest airports to Ukraine. Poland is a big supporter of Ukraine during this war. And Poland is a great country for Turkey too. We have great relations. But Poland is very protectionist country in aviation, in civil aviation too. As a comparison, before the war between Turkey and Ukraine, there are more than 200 regular flights. Poland economy is around 3 times bigger than Ukrainian economy. And between Poland and Turkey, we have now less than 20 flights per week. So 10 times less than Poland's Turkish flights. Istanbul is a very important logistics hub for cargo shipment and passengers. And Istanbul mostly connects European cities, east and south direction. So we should lots Polish airlines, Turkish airline companies should increase their frequency between Poland and Turkey, and they will start to fly, especially between cities close to on the border of Ukraine, like Rzeszów, like Krakow. So we need new flights between that direction to facilitate business, investment, let's say, and logistic issues. It is let's say, the latest appearance of Turkish businesses in Ukraine. We are committed to Ukraine. We will work Ukraine. We will work in Ukraine. And even under these harsh conditions, challenging conditions, we still believe in Ukraine. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Burak. You underlined very professionally key areas that still need to be developed in Ukraine and recent developments of our cooperation and regional angle as well. Well, as everyone can appreciate, we are in war conditions now, so we're trying our best. And indeed, Ukrainian government did a lot. So starting with free loans, support, critical imports lists, and so on. Also, let me remind our audience that this is interactive event. I have seen a lot of comments and many of those kind of representation of your companies. So this is good because this is the interaction platform. But we have only 15 minutes left for this event. So please, if you have any questions, specific questions to today's speakers, please type them in now in the comments section. And I have one question before you have time to type questions to Emma and Burak. President Zelensky and our politicians several times said that there could be and there will be a possibility for cooperation with Ukraine on a twinning basis. So kind of a country that will help rebuild a specific region of Ukraine, or a company that can enter Ukraine and support rebuilding of a specific sector of Ukrainian economy. So I would like to address this question to Emma and Burak. Bearing in mind your vast experience about sectors of economy in Canada and in Turkey, what kind of private companies or sectors do you think may be the first ones for this type of cooperation? Not only to rebuild Ukraine, but to build a long-term, and as I mentioned before, win-win cooperation between Ukraine, Canada, and Turkey. Emma, what is your view on this? Which sectors, which companies, which regions?
Yeah, in terms of sector, I have already mentioned that Ukraine badly needs gas supply and increase of domestic production of oil and gas. And as far as I know now, our Canadian facilities are producing 100% of their capacity, yeah, and are selling to the state. So I think that in terms of industry, this can be a twinning partnership, like twinning cooperation between oil and gas sector of Canada. This may be Alberta, Saskatchewan, just where this industry is concentrated, and we are already working on this with the Ukrainian oil and gas sector. And in terms of area, this can be Western Ukraine and the whole Canada. So people who are pensioners, who are who have roots in Western Ukraine, will gladly help with rebuilding and relocation of businesses and people to the Western Ukraine, because many people from the Eastern Ukraine will have nowhere to come back, unfortunately. And we are already working on such the initiative, and maybe shortly I will be able to update you on this initiative. Thank you.
Thank you, Emma. Burak?
It's a very good question. President is very result-focused person. Before the war, Turkish companies had realized in Ukraine more than $8 billion US projects, including the opening gate of capital of Ukraine, Borispol International Airport, 5-star hotels, 1,000 kilometers highways and roads, the most modern stadium of the country, hundreds of thousands square meters residential areas, shopping centers, industrial facilities, and there used to be more than 2.5 billion US dollars ongoing projects. And Turkish construction companies, which entered the largest 250 international construction companies in the world, 50 of them, they were very actively contributed to Ukraine increasing its infrastructure capacity. So I think that will continue. So construction, infrastructure construction will be a big focus, cooperation focus between Turkey and Ukraine. Secondly, because of the follow-ups and problems of war, we will need some fast solutions, at least temporarily, for people who internally displaced or had to go abroad, as you mentioned, Emma. Almost 70%, more than 65% of Ukrainian children are now abroad. So Turkey has another big expense here, because today Turkey is the largest refugee host in the world. More than 5.5 million refugees Turkey hosts now. So Turkey has the experience, competence, and knowledge about it. So to share this knowledge and to realize some projects in that area could be another focus. And considering our proximity, considering our friendship, and considering the size of the Turkish-Ukraine economic relations, I think Turkey could contribute one of the big cities, let's say as Kharkiv maybe, that process. Of course, I don't have some big checks and I signed these checks, so I cannot say about it. But to create some cooperation in such a big city as Kharkov, which you mentioned, at least 1,000 buildings have damaged or totally destroyed. I don't know the latest situation in the city, but at least 1,000 buildings several damage in the city. So that could be as a city position. So construction infrastructure and fast solution, residential solutions, and Kharkov maybe could be an example for that cooperation. Thank you, Sergey.
Thank you very much, Emma. Thank you, Burak. So oil and gas with Canada, infrastructure, and rebuilding of residential and commercial housing in Ukraine. Yes, in terms of refugees, very interesting. And I have spoken to several leaders of Ukrainian construction industry and people in government, in kind of social services. So we think that it will be important not to rebuild Ukraine and introduce temporary housing, but to start with building proper housing. Because we don't want to have Ukraine as a temporary refugees camp. We want to make sure that there will be proper housing in place straight away. So we will be happy to talk to our partners and colleagues and consider how international funds and Ukrainian funds can do that. One of the ways to do that is to improve Ukrainian mortgage system as well. So because cheap mortgages, they can lead to inflows of money from banking system to civil society and then going back to construction companies, because this will be a way forward as well. Emma, do you have a comment?
Yeah, I would like to comment. I am not a director of Canada-Ukraine Chamber of Commerce only, but I am also expert for International Organization for Migration and work in other countries like Georgia for them. And I would like to say that what sometimes the international organizations propose temporary houses, these are like shelters, at the cost of the normal house. Because yesterday, I think our Polish partners and our initiative group discussed cost of budget house for Ukrainians. This will be absolutely normal house like in Canada, built of sandwich panels. And this cost is comparable, even not shelter, but this normal house would cost even less than temporary house. And this is to be considered during developing these programs. And you know that the United States had very negative experience with the temporary houses, which are becoming ghetto in a few years.
Yes, absolutely. So we need to think of something that will bring stability and will ensure that people of Ukraine will move back to Ukraine. They will have to feel safe and comfortable, obviously, in Ukraine. Okay, so going back to questions from the audience, there is a comment from Telma Etim about possible problems at customs of Ukraine. Obviously, we do not have anyone from customs today to reply to your questions, but Ukraine Invest, as governments of Ukraine investment agency, will happy to support you. So any questions like that, you can send to my email address. I will now type in my email address in the comments. So anyone, please get in touch with us. One more question from me, and then I will check if there are any more questions to you. Sanctions on Russia, very important. Many types of sanctions. I don't know how many waves of sanctions were introduced already, 7 or 8 so far, only by European Union. But there is one sanction from my point of view that may work well as well and support Ukraine. So this is not only about punishing the aggressor. It's about the way how to support Ukraine. Russia was a big importer of many products to the world. Ukraine produces some of these goods, and Ukraine can produce more. We already agreed with International Trade Council that we will do a joint analytical paper on this, and we will see what kind of products were produced in Russia and imported to countries as well as to Canada and Turkey. And then we can talk to local procurement agencies and companies that procure products from our region and ask them to buy from Ukraine. Again, question to Emma and Burak. What do you think? What kind of reaction from private business will be? Will they be happy to wait some time and buy from Ukraine, and how we can approach them to make that possible? So again, to buy from Ukraine now, not to stop procurement, and then to invest in Ukraine maybe jointly, and then buy these products from Ukraine from newly built factories. So Emma, please, and Burak.
Just thank you. From the Canadian perspective, Canadians are quite conservative and nothing just but business. That's why from today's discussion with one of the plant producing metal constructions, before the war, they made a contract with one of the Canadian customers, and unfortunately, customer telephoned them and said, "Sorry, I'm a small company and I can't bear such huge risk. So that's why I source this kind of product from the similar Romanian company." So that's why without just serious state and public support, working with the Ukrainian business from the Canadian side remains a challenge.
Burak, what is your view? How we engage Turkish companies to do that?
Before it, I should add one of the cooperation point, tourism. Maybe it is not, let's say, very visionary enough to speak about tourism, but maybe we should think about it too. Because now everybody in the world knows Ukraine more and more. And such a rich country with nature, history, and such a small number of tourists Ukraine hosts, it is unacceptable. Sergey, I should underline and remind our audience that a very good program of the Ukrainian government too, which I use it. Relocation of the businesses. We should praise that program. I relocate one of my businesses in Kamenets-Podolsky. This Kamenets-Podolsky is like a gem in Ukraine. Together with Emma, we were 4 years ago in an economic forum there. And 4 years, there is very small differences in that. Really, one of the most beautiful Eastern European cities. Because of the logistic problems, only 100,000 tourists can visit this city, for example. I saw it 2 weeks ago. 1 million people, 1.5 million people wouldn't be a surprise. So tourism would be another important thing we should focus on. And I should again remind that when I say fast housing, it's not container housing. Among these 5.5 million refugees or our guests in Turkey, only less than 2% of them live in temporary houses. So I agree totally with you and Emma that we should focus, let's say, a fixed and very long-term solutions, not just today solution and after forget it. This is very important thing that the trade will continue. Ukraine has made its largest foreign trade surplus over the recent 30 years with the trade with Turkey. So Turkey is one of the largest Ukrainian Ukraine's importer. And we are still close, so we can use more Constanța port, and we can use more the facilities, this Danova ports of Ukraine, maybe the maximum capacity, and Turkey can work to unblockade that Ukrainian ports. So it will be, of course, the most desirable solution. So it is important, but till then we shouldn't wait, Sergey. So we should think about Turkish equipments, Turkish production lines, because Turkish is one of the largest re-exporter of Ukrainian products too. Import sometimes from Ukraine and from other countries and process it, and to have very great relations, trade relations with African countries, Middle Eastern countries, Far Eastern countries, Far Eastern Asian countries. So to lose this leverage, yeah. So we can think about some joint production, some joint investments, some equipment supplies, and we should start production in Ukraine to make less products, because we have now in Ukraine less export capacity because of the blockage of the ports. And so we can more value-added products create in Ukraine and export Turkey and third countries, including EU. Considering UK and EU will nullify the taxes and tariffs between Ukraine at least 1 year. I hope that it will be not temporary and permanently. So it would be a very important area, Sergey and Emma, that bring manufacturing, bring value-added chains to Ukraine.
Thank you, Burak. One more question from the audience. We have 1 minute, so 30 seconds each, please. So, Burak, a question to you first. The question is, what are the major legal issues in rebuilding Ukraine? The question is put by Keith Rostin. It's not specified here whether Ukrainian legal issues or international legal issues, but just 30 seconds your view.
You know, I think now we will see another Ukraine. I think Ukraine used to have an image of corruption, it was very overestimated. Ukraine didn't have such a corruption as people abroad think. There are some, but everywhere. But now in new Ukraine, let's say, we will even less see that kind of things. But to create, as our audience said, that to create the legal and infrastructural base for rebuilding and reconstruction is important. It should be very simply, very auditably, very controllably, and very multilaterally. If we can do it, really we will see a very updated infrastructure and reconstruction we can see in Ukraine. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Burak. Emma, do you see any legal issues right now that's kind of an obstacle for rebuilding Ukraine? Or what needs to be done within legal framework?
I think that we have all laws available to rebuild Ukraine. But of course, the most important thing is just not to jump to conclusions and don't try to make this everything so quickly. This good basis for business is crucial for eliminating of mistakes in future. Of course, there are no quick solutions, and good Ukrainian partners are really, and good Ukrainian lawyers are really very important for doing business. As our British colleague said, in every business you have a lawyer and you have a banker. So, and you need accountant, and you need good partner. Partnership is really very important, and I would like to mention that this situation is not about two neighboring nations living unfortunately next to each other. This situation is about the whole world. I see people from the whole world here, and I think that final purpose of Putin is destabilization of the world market, just food security, and all order which was set up after the Second World War. That's why cooperation with Ukraine is really important for all of us, not for us as Ukrainians just rebuild our country, but for the whole world to ensure that you have reliable partner and supplier of food products, metal, and who are maybe today are the best army of the world in terms of human capital.
Thank you very much, Emma. Very brief comment from me on that. I think that there will be no restrictions in terms of legal terms, but first of all, we need to have political will to support Ukraine, and it's out there. And I'm sure that international community, European countries, world countries will adjust their regulatory framework to support Ukraine. And Ukrainian parliament and government will do the same. And we already see that. We have seen that European Union has cut custom duties for all Ukrainian products that will be supplied to European Union. So this is a very excellent example of legal framework being flexible to suit political realities and political support for Ukraine. On this note, I thank you our excellent speakers, Burak Pehlivan, Emma Turas, and I thank International Trade Council for this excellent event and opportunity to talk about Ukraine. Please do get in touch with us with any ideas. We will succeed together. Please have a good day, and Slava Ukraini.
Героям слава!
Thank you, everyone.
Have a good day.
Thank you very much. Thank you for listening, guys.
Thank you.